Pay attention, it's all here. Primer is a 2004 time travel film that was created on a reported budget of just $7,000. It has maintained a bit of a cult classic status among science fiction fans, and today I want to talk about what exactly makes Primer debatably the best time travel film of all time. To be clear, there are absolutely unpleasant side effects of Primer's incredibly limited budget. I'm not here to try and claim it is an overall perfect film, but in terms of execution of the premise of time travel itself and the horror it can inflict upon its protagonist, I can't really think of many other time travel films that have done it as well as Primer. In fact, I would actually make the case that quite a bit of Primer's appeal could actually be attributed to its smaller budget. I don't know too much about the cameras and lenses used here, but the end result is this graininess to the actual film that adds this almost toxic swirl to everything. The minimal effort put into the costume design of keeping things literally business casual reflects the main character's own disattachment to having any severe personality aside from the traits that drive them and their overwhelming obsession with the project. Yellows and browns prevalent from beginning to end give Primer a sickly feel to look at, which works tonally so well with what's to come. Combine that with frustratingly realistic dialogue with a notable percentage of the words delivered here overlapping.
That I have a clear understanding of what it is we're saying that thing's gonna do.
I just think we should let them go at it for the next 2 months. You know, they do theirs, we do ours.
From the time we installed it.
Liquid helium, these guys are funded.
No,
that's not what he's
that's what
doing.
this is, okay? That's the whole difference. That's what the box is.
As far as turning it on,
Actually, when I was testing the box, it turns out that over half the rings are redundant. So it actually makes the plate smaller.
No.
And there's a lot more.
In some ways, Primer can almost have this cheap, on-the-ground documentary feel, like you're watching these mad scientists in real life make these groundbreaking discoveries. But also it can be detached, clinical, reflecting the intent from these main characters. And then finally, there are these artistic choices made with the camera, very deliberate, intelligent framing with how certain shots close, beginning, end. And all of these choices come together to achieve a remarkably consistent artistic undertone to this film about a scientific addiction. These men's personal lives fade to the background. Characters of wife and children appear but are hardly ever the focus and often addressed with dismissiveness. Jobs also remain somewhat meaningless and vague. All that matters is the project. Two men barely even able to focus on life outside of their passion. Primer has Aaron and Abe, the two pro and antagonists at the wheel, almost start coming across like priests in their collared shirts, devoted to one singular purpose, until the need to remove oneself from the equation occurs. But brilliantly, the pattern continues. A passion or addiction does not go away just because success is achieved. And for a time travel movie, even at these pivotal moments where these grand reveals are happening, Primer's built-in dialogue is so natural that it doesn't feel overly grandiose, explains everything, while also maintaining an incredibly believable level of human capacity to explain these very confusing concepts. But that's intentional. It is there, the answers are in front of you, but the difficulty in understanding them for the audience becomes a driving factor of the conflict for the remainder of the movie, and that's goddamn genius in a time travel film. You hear all the time that time travel movies have unexplained answers, unexplained consequences, things that are just, wait, you could do this with the time turner, then why didn't you do that? That's the central conflict of Primer. Is it a closed loop or an open loop? You didn't establish these rules. Can we establish these rules? Are they breakable? It is a time travel movie built around the unknowable of time travel and the terrible answers you can get once you begin experimenting. A phone call that is answered in two different ways, proving the loop is not closed. An oh shit moment that can only be as intense as these human characters can deliver it on a limited budget in this type of movie. And because of that, it feels so out of their hands, so impossible for them to fully grasp the consequences of this, yet we see them continue to walk forward. And sorry if you're gonna hear me talk about conflict a little bit too much in this review, but I just see a lot of people talking about it purely from how the time travel is utilized perspective, which is great, don't get me wrong. But I also wanna take a moment to really appreciate how honestly little characterization is given to Abe and Aaron. They're there, don't get me wrong, wrong. It's just not obviously a relationship or character-focused narrative. Yet, that minimal characterization is used to its absolute maximum potential for all of the subsequent conflicts that arise between them. It's a great example from a writing perspective, how you can have a minimal approach to character, but as long as you are tight in your scripting and make sure that the motivations and results are still there, it'll still absolutely work. It's a different style, and it's harder to do, and that's why I appreciate it a lot. I really believe on second watch of this film, which I think I need to do a third or fourth before I understand everything, that moment, the phone call, which you'll understand once you watch the movie, that proves the loop isn't closed, is when the doomed trajectory of the full story was solidified in the timeline, if you're willing to let me be a little corny. And the movie goes out of its way to show us how time travel, truly to its greatest extent between two butting heads, can be used for conflict. Every sip, every bite, every action, word can be twisted, used, manipulated. And then there's the errors, the unknowable changes that happen between, all seeming to slip between fingers that are so desperately grasping for power. The script itself is an equation, all pieces fitting painfully deliberately into place. And if you're paying attention here, that is exactly why the second half of the movie essentially needs to be watched while taking notes, even though there's a narration explaining things going on. You are watching a price being paid, and it's on you, Aaron, and Abe to figure out why and how. If the project is beholden to the laws of the universe, so are Abe and Aaron's passion. Their effort and work begins to show its consequences. The unchecked addiction leads to an inevitable end. Because within the rules explained within the Primer storyline, everything must be tracked meticulously. And under that pressure is where our characters begin to crack. And we feel the gap between them and the lives they are already loosely connected to begin to widen. And scientific curiosity and determination is replaced with an equal draw to greed and power. And through that, the narration that has been cutting in and out since the beginning of the film begins to take on a greater, sinister edge. We watch as Aaron and Abe begin to act as if they have mastered this new power. Remarkably human flaws lead to their downfall. Distrust and ego. And like the most enjoyable to watch crashes, you can see this end coming. And here, the subtle character distinction between Abe and Aaron becomes so crucial to understanding this story. In my second watch of the film, to me, Aaron certainly seemed a bit more reserved yet determined to see this project to its greatest end, while Abe, a bit more reckless, also showed greater fear as things began to spiral. And this type of characterization complements how the conflict is delivered within Primer as well beautifully, because you are witnessing the human side of Aaron and Abe take over in the narrative, grab onto the wheel and begin to turn it. The delivery of conflict comes in subtle yet tense moments. The true antagonist of Primer is the unknowing, which leads to miscommunications and complications. Their days have been extended longer, they're getting less sleep, distrust and paranoia grow. This leads to actions within loops based on incomplete information. The unknowable grows, and the questions finally asked. Were you planning on talking with him? This is a scene that shows, as much as these two in earlier scenes have talked about how great of friends they are and how much trust there is, no one really ever trusts somebody all the way. And once you hang a treat before a dog, they can justify biting at it. It doesn't matter how much their friend wants it, they can always justify biting first. The arrogance of believing a scientific failsafe could actually be introduced is essentially laughed at by the narrative because, no matter how many safeguards you put into play, humans will human. Once you add a whole new dimension to the conflict, literally, your safeguards are about as flimsy as a sheet of paper. A earbud becomes recontextualized, 2 rooms act as a great betrayal, but the loop is never closed. Pay attention, I know this sounds confusing. I'm not spoiling anything, but it's all here. Revision becomes all that matters. In the final seconds of the film, it is revealed where the chess pieces land on the board and whether or not both players know all the rules to the game. And then that's when it all ends. I just rewatched this movie again with Kayla, and I really wanted to recommend it to you all. If you are in the mood to have your mind just bent with one of the most impressive low-budget films ever created, no question. Yes, it looks cheap, but while you're watching this, remember, $7,000. And appreciate a script that so well understands maintaining focus on one core idea and conflict, editing that results in an aesthetic feel, momentum to the film that I did not think you could possibly achieve with something released this long ago with what was available to these creators. You'll probably be frustrated at times by Primer. I would recommend not pausing it, not turning it off, don't read anything, and just try and experience it once through. Then sure, look at the graphs, try and figure it all out and understand who exactly moved first on who, why, and when. As messy as an experience it undoubtedly is, Primer is time travel. Primer is absolutely time travel. Primer is absolutely that you have not experienced before. Pay attention, it's all here. Yeah, there's a lot of things you can kind of drag it down for in various ways if you want to be incredibly critical of it, but I would actually push back and say there are just as many achievements in this film that should not have been able to be achieved with the way it was made that elevate it comfortably back into that must-watch territory for fans of science fiction and just film. Seeing what you can do with passion and effort and just dedication on a smaller budget is goddamn inspirational. If anything else, none of the like mind-bending stuff I just talked about appeals to you on just an appreciation of passion level. It's available on these platforms. Go check it out. Bah!
Oh hi, I didn't see you there. I'm running a Kickstarter for my book, TLT, The Lawful Times. First 2 books put into one. If you want a special edition, link down below.